So you mentioned the Portland Linux Unix User Group earlier, and you've been one of the organizers of the group before. Can you talk a bit about what are the keys to sustain a user group like this over decades?
That's how we met, in fact. You came to my FOSSE talk, which was an update, a post-lockdown update to my talk about sustainable communities. The audio was a bit challenged, and the AV crew had to move during my talk, so they didn't have an official recording. It's one of my best talks. It's killing me. So I first gave a talk on sustainable communities back with, I think, Linux Fest Northwest. It was like 20 years and counting, Portland Linux Unix Group. Like, how does a scrappy little group sustain itself, and what lessons are there? And then the updated one was 30 years and counting, because suddenly 10 more years passed by. So in that, a key lesson was from, as we mentioned, LACA, that association in Latvia. Someone had the unique, clever idea to register as a non-public benefit, much easier nonprofit, just to have that sort of formality. And the moment they did that, every single meeting became about discussing who's going to file the quarterly paperwork with the tax authorities, despite there being virtually no money changing hands, maybe for a domain name. So looking at the Plug experience, Portland Linux Unix Group, Plug is a domain name. That's it. People have shown up on the first Thursday of the month since like 94, 96, and probably will. And after the apocalypse, they'll show up first Thursday if they can at the same time and place, because that is infinitely sustainable. And as an organizer, I took over from my predecessor and now have largely handed over the reins. You have to rinse and repeat. It becomes muscle memory, and you just make your announcements in the exact same way, and you do a lot of copy paste. And the single biggest challenges, of course, are presenters and venues. Venues are a major challenge. And post-lockdown, fortunately, I could use another community center that I'm involved in, and we kind of beta tested for larger events, and that's worked out well. But it's when you're trying to deliver something priceless, like a volunteer talk that could be Linus Torvalds himself, true story, from Plug a few times. It's like, well, that, is that a multi-million-dollar conference with that, or is it just an organic, let's have a beer and talk about whatever? It is truly wonderful and priceless, but bringing that chemistry together of a venue and the people and the announcements and the timing is a challenge. And when you achieve it and it's sustainable enough, be proud of that, celebrate that, because it can be so fragile. Changes of venue, especially if you depend on them in some way, like, oh, we don't have our own projector, hypothetically. Well, no one can afford one, and oh, that place had one, and the company would let us use it for free, etc. Just truly cherish those situations. The convention center is sure not loaning us space to have a meeting. Thank you very much. So there have been a lot of lessons there in event planning and all that. So my number one rule on sustainability is just keep it simple in every way you can. When there's something that can be a nice optional benefit that shows up, be it food, great, but don't rely on having food. If the moment you do that, it means there's money changing hands. It means there's health risks. It means there's countless variables that can be out of your control. And a theme from the meeting that you attended at FOSSE was that, well, a lot of organizations, including one example of just a running group, couldn't survive lockdown. They just, which seems like the most perfect group to thrive during lockdown. For whatever reason, they didn't survive it, whereas others did. And oh, great time to mention, well, exactly what we're doing, meeting online. That has been one of the, I'd argue, greatest equalizers. We are down to languages and time zones, and that's it. And we have this new awareness of jumping on a call. And I now without hesitation, call up a colleague in Armenia or in Melbourne, Australia, without hesitation, where in the good old days, when we grew up, it was like you schedule calls. You really worry about like, oh, am I catching them in the morning or not? And long distance fees and all that nonsense. And uh, transparency is fantastic, but also equally compatible is anonymity, if I pronounce that right. I mean, you can not share your video, you can be a fly on the wall, and well, we assume the best intentions, and please speak when you're ready. We're not just going to say, if you don't do an introduction, you're off the call. No, that's not cool. And so those who might have challenges speaking a language and maybe only are good with the chat and are not in a nifty, glorious office building with a beautiful background, well, they can have a synthetic background and only use chat, and they are an absolute participant. And another lesson from lockdown, and this is a bit sad, was that the disabled of the world have heard the lessons. Oh, it's impossible to work from home. You'd never be efficient. You'd never have that. You'd never blah, blah, whatever excuse. You couldn't happen. And then everyone had to work from home, minus a few exceptions. And the disabled of the world are like, yeah, we've been telling you for ever. So that plays into it such that this new awareness, be it a science fiction future where you jump on a video phone around the world or into space, great, whatever, that's extremely enabling in ways that are only now becoming clear. And just before this, Ildiko, we were talking about just subtitles. Having just wrapped up a conference, for the first time, I've had a moment to think about how good are the subtitles. I've never had time or motivation to just click the little CC at the bottom of the thing. It's like, oh, gee, they don't even capitalize the first letter of the first word. There's work to be done. And technical terms get mangled consistently, hopefully very consistently, that you can find in a place. So I've mobilized a few people on working on, we'll divvy up the 19 talks, and you each work on one, and here's how far we got, hand it over to someone else. And for those who use the proprietary platform YouTube, they now have the ability to delegate subtitle management. So you can give someone permission to only edit subtitles, which I'd say is fantastic, especially if translating to another language, that is golden. So you could use that platform to get your subtitles good and then move to PeerTube and delete from the proprietary one. So there, I said it. I just love this era insofar as we're all kind of equal. We didn't want that, but the benefits of that are actually really, really good. So, and earlier I touched on that idea of like a quiet user to a user who asks a question and a user who reports a bug, etc. I've seen it real time that through online calls, people can compress that time to go from one level of interaction to the next to perhaps days instead of what could be years or just never. Like, oh, I'm too shy to ask a developer a question or too shy to be seen for whatever reason. Well, okay, well, not a problem anymore. Let's embrace that. Let's run with that. Quick happy story. Beehive calls begat OpenZFS calls because everyone using Beehive was using OpenZFS. And then they begat jail calls and zone calls because that's related. But people were so pent up, for lack of a better term, on that topic that we had a new experimental front end within 2 weeks. That someone like took the Lua language and thought, oh, wait, it's just an API to hit. Okay, I'll try this. Here's the proof of concept. And they just banged it out. Just hearing from others that you can do something, because organically we can all sit thinking in our offices or otherwise that we know everything. We don't. And just that interaction is magical, and I'd argue priceless. And related, I've found that developers and administrators need to vocalize things. So one of the greatest things I can do is get developers talking, occasionally strategically use something that's a little incorrect so that they jump on it. That's the surefire way to get open source developers to like jump in and correct you. It's like, oh, uh-oh, suddenly everyone's discussing this topic and they're making progress. So uh, I think that this new sci-fi era we're in with video conversations from our homes is a really good thing.